everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Medfield College Film Society. I'm your host, Jeff Crawford. I am joined by my fellow society members. This is our second episode of the first season for those of you keeping score at home. And I would like to introduce the founder of our podcast, Mr. Robert McSwain. Robert, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Crawford. It is great to be here. This one's going to be a doozy, I think. I'm really looking forward to this one.
It definitely will be. It'll be a journey. That's all. I'll leave it at that. Andy Brown, reporting from the mountains of North Carolina. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing swell. Hope you guys are. I'm excited to be here.
Doing great. And I'm very excited to host in the studio tonight from the land of however many lakes there are in Central Florida. Mr. Michael Crawford is in the studio.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back in the old North State.
That's right.
For recording.
Yeah, for those of you who know Michael's book, The Progress City Primer, it is was recorded here, the audiobook version.
Hey, that's true.
But get that book.
Get on Audible, man. Use those Audible credits.
Get on Audible.
Yeah, get it.
Michael, what are we watching this month?
This month we're watching a really special piece of work, the 1944 classic, The Three Caballeros, directed by supervising director Norm Ferguson, a longtime Disney animator, and starring Clarence Nash as Donald Duck, Jose Oliveira as Jose, and Joaquin Garay as Panchito, with Aurora Miranda, Carmen Molina, and Dora Luz, and the voice of Sterling Holloway, among others.
And what a movie it is.
Yeah, this is Disney's 7th animated feature. It's the second of 6 package features that they put out in the 1940s. And it is the first color feature film to incorporate animation with live action. It's the first of many Disney movies to do that.
I did not know that. And there's some interesting trivia behind this. Some world history.
Yeah, this more surprisingly more than like Gus or the Boatniks. This has more fascinating past. It has a long history, but in short, in the 1930s, the FDR administration had started a program trying to build up unity among Latin and South American countries and the United States to combat the Nazis who were making inroads in especially Argentina, but also across South America, and trying to make propaganda footholds. And so they started something called the Good Neighbor Program. And Nelson Rockefeller, the big-time businessman, his family had lots of business interests in South America, and he saw the Nazis coming in and was concerned. So he kind of went straight to Washington and said, we need to do something about this. So they made him the head of a newly formed agency called the Coordinator of Commercial and Cultural Relations between the American Republics, which quickly got simplified to the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs, or CIAA. And this was an agency separate from the State Department, but it existed to do sort of educational and economic intervention in South America and Latin America, and also basically propaganda, goodwill propaganda. And so they set up an office in Hollywood with Francis Alstock and Jock Whitney, and they were in charge of Hollywood outreach. And they went around to studios trying to get them to incorporate Latin American themes into their pictures. And this had some success and some failures, a lot more failures, until they got to Disney. And in 1940, in October, Roy Disney met with them about the possibility of putting some South American atmosphere into a few of the cartoon shorts to help the cause. But this kind of grew, this idea grew. And by June of 41, they had reached an agreement to produce 12 Latin American themed shorts over the next 2 years. But also, simultaneous with that, they came up with a plan for Walt and some of his artists to make a research and goodwill tour of South America. And they would do firsthand research on the cultures and arts and music to use in the films. And they would meet with local artists and musicians and kind of act as goodwill ambassadors. So starting in August of 41, Walt picked 15 members of his staff, and they went on a trip, visited Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and parts of the group split off, went to Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Panama, Guatemala, and Mexico. And they were gone through the end of October and had a really successful trip. There's a whole lot more to that story. That's the bare bones of it. But I'd recommend that everybody check out. There's a documentary called Walt and El Grupo, which is already available online, but it will be premiering on Disney Plus sometime at the start of the year. So check out that there. And there's a great, great book called South of the Border with Disney by my idol, J.B. Kaufman. That's a really great look at the trip and then all the movies that resulted from it. So there's a really good story there. But after they made this trip, they formed a South American unit at the studio headed by Norm Ferguson. And they were going to make 12 one-reel cartoons. But they came to decide as time went by that it would be a bigger cultural impact and a bigger financial boon to package those shorts into feature films. So the first of these debuted in 1942 called Saludos Amigos, and it was a big success critically and commercially. And so a few years later, they continued to work, and they put out a lot of educational films and a lot of training films like The Grain That Built a Hemisphere and Water, Friend or Enemy, and all kinds of like non-commercial films like that.
That's ominous.
Yeah, really. The Winged Scourge, which was about malaria and, all sorts of fun stuff like that. So they kept working on these entertainment shorts for the next feature, and
it's like something Troy McClure should show up in,
Yeah.
Water, friend or
foe. The Grain That Built a Hemisphere, which is, it's good stuff.
And Gladys, the Groovy Mule.
So in 1944, they premiered the second of these package films, which was our film we're discussing today, The Three Caballeros. It premiered in Mexico City. Disney and his artists had done a number of shorter goodwill trips to Mexico to do research for this, and had brought in a lot of local talent to help out, and had done a lot of research. And so they premiered it in Mexico City, then it premiered in America in early 1945. And so that is what brings us the film that we're talking about today.
Yeah, and that Walt and El Grupo movie is really great. It is worth the watch if you haven't seen it.
I have not seen that one. That sounds really good, though.
Yeah, it's an
really
interesting time in Walt's life, too. So,
I should mention that this all happened well, obviously this was right before the war broke out, that America got into the war. The war was already going on. But there was also a big animator strike happening at the studio at the time that kind of changed the course of the studio's history forever and really tore it apart. And this was kind of a way to get out of town and do something else for a while. So it was kind of a big deal.
See, I knew about the World War II tie-in. I didn't realize it actually started pre-US's entrance into the war.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Well, it's really interesting, like when you watch, like in the documentary and the book, people realized like what was going on at the time. And it was like in the newspapers in South America, it was like, Mickey Mouse smashes the Nazis, because it was like a really big deal. They had sent out a bunch of like Hollywood people before, and it had gone really badly. And in fact, I think it was the Brazilian, like their foreign minister had said, if Hollywood sends another goodwill ambassador, Brazil will declare war on the United States, because people went in and were like, just kind of like the ugly American stereotype of just being kind of clueless. So when they sent Disney in, they were like, don't say you're there as part of the CIAA, just say you're there as Disney and you're doing research for a movie. And so everywhere they went, it was like a huge deal, and like all like the local intellectuals and politicians and everybody would come out. And so it was all seen as like Disney chasing the Nazis out of South America or wherever they were going.
Incidentally, Michael and I and the 2 rooms of the 3-room studio have each have a copy of South of the Border with Disney present. Yes. So just so you all know.
Just in case,
I forgot. I left mine back in the other room. I'm sorry. Andy, did you bring yours with you tonight?
What?
I'll take that as a maybe.
So yeah, I mean, talking about who's involved, it's a real who's who of Disney talent at the time. There's a lot of people who would go on to do all kinds of things within the company, including Imagineering. I mean, some Imagineering real all-stars.
Yeah.
Claude Coates was involved, and
I mean,
Mary Blair. Yeah.
Yeah, this is usually the part of the podcast where I would say, you know, are there Disney legends in this? But honestly, it'd be easier to say who wasn't a Disney legend who was involved with this. Like the people in the credits, once you read down, is, you know, are really a who's who of people that not only like created like all the animated classics up until like the 60s, but the people that like founded Imagineering, who designed all the major theme park attractions and, you know, everything. So you can see a direct line. This allowed a lot of the kind of weird nature of this movie allowed a lot of artists to get their style across in a way that didn't come before. There's a lot of Mary Blair in this. So like if you've seen the big mural at the Contemporary Resort in Florida with all the kids on it, like you see the start of that like style in this movie. So
right, yeah.
There are a lot of really influential people involved in this one.
And not to get too into it, but, you know, as per usual, Ub Iwerks is a kind of special effects, special process guy. And there's just a lot of interesting experimentation. And he famously helped kind of design Mickey Mouse for Walt.
Yeah, he like basically co-founded the company with Walt and Roy and drew all those early Mickey Mouse cartoons. But I mean, he, like you said, was a technical guy. And he invented for this movie the two-headed optical printer, which allowed them to do all the matte work to bring in like all the animated characters into the film. That didn't actually exist before this movie, and he invented that. And I mean, that's something that, you know, goes on to do every Star Wars and everything else, you know. So that all started here with him.
Anytime I watch this, I think it's a propaganda film, and that makes it really interesting to me. Andy, this is your first time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And were you aware that this was a propaganda film when you were watching?
No, I thought this was a kid's movie.
That's where they get you.
And you have to keep kind of reminding yourself. I think there's all throughout the movie going, okay, I see why they did that. That makes sense now.
Yeah.
Because you know that. And the whole time I'm thinking, if Andy doesn't know that, this is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as soon as I finish, here's my, you know, you guys always want to know what my, you know, gut reaction is. This is it right here.
What the hell was that?
I mean, that's what it was. I finished watching this movie, and I'm not going to, because I have too many like spoiler stuff written down, but we'll revisit this later. But yeah. That one was that was a weird one, fellas.
That's great that you, because I kept thinking that same soundbite from Krusty the Clown, the whole owned by Disney now, by the way.
Yes,
so
that's all on brand.
We're good, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's still on brand. So I kept hearing that soundbite in my head the whole time I was watching it, thinking that Andy's going to be thinking that exact same thing. So that's perfect that you said that. I agree. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's a weird movie, and made even more weird by the fact that, you know, originally it was going to be 4 separate shorts, but as they decided they were going to make it into a regular movie, like the first 2 segments of it, which we'll talk about, were more along the way. So those are more like shorts that could be just cut out and released separately as a separate thing. But as they went along, they got more elaborate and more involved, and so the ones that come later are kind of more integrated into kind of a whole story. But I mean, it is super episodic, and it's super weird, super crazy.
And it keeps getting more and more weird too.
Yeah. Oh no, they like it's at first it's just kind of like cute, and then kind of quirky, and then like it goes like full bore crazy at the end.
Okay, see, this makes me feel so much better, because I was like, what in the world have these guys got me watching? And
what, now, Andy? What's wrong with it? It's totally normal.
It was great, Andy. What are you talking about?
Let's get into this thing.
Forgive me, but have you been to Bahia, Donald? No? Well, let's go. If you go to Bahia, my friend, you'll never return. E muita sorte teve, muita sorte tem, e muita sorte terá. Have you been to Bahia, dono? Well, let's go.
The movie opens with the credits, and we see it's sort of a huge fanfare, and they play the overture, and they have the glorious Technicolor graphic, and the artwork is all pastel, which kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the contemporary. That was sort of the
Yeah, it's definitely a Mary Blair title cards, and the music at the beginning is just great from the beginning. I mean,
yeah, it was. I mean, that's. I watched it 3 times before we recorded this, and I guess about the 3rd time through it, I started going, the music really, I mean, I was really starting to enjoy it a lot more than I did the first time. I was sort of more in Andy's camp, even though I knew that it was propaganda. I was kind of going, man, this is really weird.
But, it's weird.
So, I think the thing, opening's very simplistic. So, there's no background. We see a solo spotlight strikes a package. That's how the whole movie starts. And I guess my first question is, were they being rushed? Did they have to, were they like, okay, we don't have time to put a background or to put this in Donald's house and design anything. We just need to set up the plot that this package has arrived. I mean,
well, I think
so that's my first question.
These like linking segments, like the wraparound kind of stuff, was among the last stuff that they actually did. I don't know if that was a factor of like time or budget or just a creative choice, but it is kind of weird how it all takes place in kind of like this void where it's like, must be like Donald's house because he like, gets a present, is kind of like hanging out there, but there is no set. It's like really just sort of, he's in infinity or whatever, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I've always thought that was kind of intentional because everything gets so abstract and colorful very quickly. But yeah, who knows?
So Donald then reads the tag, and it's in Spanish. And is it just me, or I felt like Donald was like, I mean, of course he has a speech impediment, but it was really hard to understand him here. I mean, he's reading Spanish, but then the tag morphs into English so that the viewer can read it. And it's still hard to understand him for me, I thought.
Oh, man, I had 2 minutes in and I had to turn subtitles on. I was like, I cannot understand. I mean, Donald is probably, I'll go ahead and say, Donald is probably one of my least favorite of the animated characters just because I find him abrasive and selfish, and I don't know.
Uh-oh.
I know.
I think it's going to be the first real fight.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand his importance in all of Disney, blah blah blah. But yeah,
no, he just blah 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 us on Donald,
blah blah blah, yada yada yada. But anyways, yeah, subtitles had to come on immediately.
So it's Donald's birthday. It's Friday the 13th. I thought that's funny. And it's Latin, and he's got a package from his special friends in Latin America. So the first package he opens is a film projector. So Donald quickly sets it up, and it's the usual antics. He has some trouble with it. The projector illuminates on his hind parts. The film starts as Aves Rares, or Strange Birds, as the narrator of the film is interacting with Donald as he asks poignant questions, and the narrator answers them. So there's just sort of this, the whole fourth wall thing's already been shattered at this point. So between Donald and the screen.
I love how like Donald is like totally into it. Like he is like, oh, that's very interesting. He's just kind of like slapping his knee and like, this is great.
I wrote, happy Donald during the first act. Why is he so happy? You're absolutely right. That's what he says at one point.
So after we establish that Donald has lots of cousins in South America, birds, that is, our story takes us to the South Pole. And all the penguins in the South Pole are living the life that you would expect penguins to live in the South Pole, enjoying themselves in the snow, except for a poor penguin named Pablo, who hates the cold and longs for a life in beautiful, warm South America. Problem is, poor Pablo can't walk away from this with his warm stove that he has in his igloo, which bears the question, why isn't the igloo melting? But it's cartoon, so we're not going to get into that.
Let it go, man. Let it go.
So, and I'll point out here, I got to know here that there's always like the dim-witted character. So they have this sort of the slow, dim-witted penguin that's sort of just loafing around. But
Yeah, I read that those the two penguins that are like always there when he like tries to take off to do something, are actually caricatures of two of the animators who are at the studio. So they're like the tall guy and the kind of like dumb slow guy are caricatures of animators. So that's something.
So Pablo, frustrated he can't hike off the South Pole, he builds an ice boat, and this actually made me laugh out loud. Was the dim-witted penguin christens the boat,
Yeah.
breaks a bottle over the ice boat, and then just tosses the broken bottle into the water and just strolls off. So, I don't know why I got a chuckle out of that, but
Yeah, that's good. I always get cracked up at the scenes at the start when they're talking about how great it is for penguins, and they kind of like show them like frolicking around, and there's something about the way they animate them that's like really funny. But then they like pause it. It's like one is skiing and then it like pauses it in midair, and one's like sledding, and they're like doing all these sort of outdoorsy things, and it's kind of like freezes it as they're kind of like giving a thumbs up to the camera. I don't know why, but that always cracks me up. It's really funny the way they drew those.
So Pablo starts heading north on his ice boat. He's got his igloo on the boat. He's got his potbelly stove. What was the name of his stove? He had a name for it.
Old Smoky or
I don't know, but it's putting
like
out a lot of smoke. I remember that.
Smoky Joe or something like that.
Serious black
Yeah,
smoke.
it was Smoky Joe. I remember. Yeah,
Okay.
so he had his potbelly stove, Smoky Joe. So he's heading up through some dense fog. There's a couple of gags there. He cuts a hole in the fog and pokes his head through, and you hear the typical foghorn sound, which that's always funny.
Boat nicks.
And we get through the Strait of Magellan and up the coast of Chile, and he looks through his eyeglass and he sees an island. Or pardon me, before that, he has a run-in with a small storm. And I didn't quite understand the significance of the storm other than it sort of followed him around and kind of scared him a little bit.
Yeah.
And then he sees an island with Robinson Crusoe on it. And I didn't quite get that part. I didn't understand why they decided to throw that in there.
I think they were just kind of name checking places. Like, I think, like originally this short when they were developed, I think it was like a pre-existing story. And so when they decided to kind of like South American it up, they were like, all right, well, he'll go up the coast of South America. And so then I think they were like, well, we'll throw in a bunch of like, he'll like see the sights of like all these different places that are like exist along the way. So that's why they kind of like name check a couple of different places.
So speaking of name checking, they go up the shoreline and he passes Vina del Mar, which was depicted beautifully.
Yeah, that's another Mary Blair. Gotta be. I mean, just beautiful.
Yeah,
Seascape.
That was impressive. I thought. I mean, that makes you want to go see what that looks like.
Yeah.
You know, seeing that animation though, it did remind me of. It reminded me of Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there some similar artists that did some of that stuff?
Totally. Yeah, it's the same group, especially like Mary Blair, a lot of those same people.
She did a lot of the concept painting for it, so the colors and stuff would be right on.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's a good call.
We cruise on past Lima, and then we go by Quito before heading across the equator towards the Galapagos Islands. And of course, the equator causes the ice boat to melt, and we're left with a bathtub. So the bathtub sort of kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't realize he even had a bathtub.
Well, they show it earlier.
Yeah, when they're like thawing him out, they put him in the bathtub. And I was like, it's kind of funny that he has a bathtub with like a shower head in his igloo, but it works.
So the bathtub floats, the boat melts, the plug on the bathtub pops, and the water comes flying through it. He jams the shower head into the hole of the bathtub drain, and that powers his boat, which was pretty funny.
Yeah. As a kid, like this like bit of cartoon logic I thought was really cool. It's like, yeah, of course that would work if your like bathtub is sinking because the water's coming in and you jam in the shower thing. It would be like a motorboat. I always thought that was really cool when I was a kid, or funny or whatever.
So he then lands on a small island called De Venta. Am I pronouncing that right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
allow
Yeah,
it.
okay. So he lands on a small island of De Venta, and Pablo is living the good life now in the hot sun, but he misses his cold weather.
All right, there's a line though that the narrator says though that I don't remember where it happened, but the line was, "That's human nature for you, even if you're a penguin."
Yeah.
And that just did not make any sense to me at all.
And that narrator, by the way, is the aforementioned Sterling Holloway, who did all kinds of voice work for Disney, but maybe most famously Winnie the Pooh, and tons of other stuff.
So then we transition the film into and there's this whole section now. I will need Michael to walk me through this because there was so much going on. We go through a bunch of exotic birds of South America.
Right. And this is another one of those things that was kind of added in as a late thing to tie everything together, because you had the kind of the vague theme of like the birds, you had the penguin, and then you had the other short that we're going to talk about in a minute. So there's this sort of bird theme. So they kind of came up with this. I think Jack Kinney, who was an animator at the studio, did these little gags. And it's just like little caricatures of different birds there in the jungle. There's the scissor-tail bird who like is cutting out his nest. And there are just a lot of gags of caricatures of the different birds. There's the little poem about two toucans making love, which is kind of weird.
I had that in my notes.
Yeah. And a couple of different things. But it also serves to introduce the Araquan bird, which is kind of a crazy character who comes to play a bigger role later in the movie.
Yeah, on my notes I have Araquan - nothing, because I don't know what to say. What do you say? How can you explain this bird?
Yeah, I don't know. He's
Yeah, I didn't even want to try it, but So the bird is wearing he's wearing a sweater. Right.
I think it's I always thought it was like a swimsuit, like a old.
Okay, okay, that's right. Yeah, so it's like a 40s era swimsuit. Yeah, 40s era swimsuit. So
this is like the Disney version of like Woody Woodpecker or something, I guess.
Yeah, there's a good analogy there. So yeah, you have this this instigator bird running around being crazy.
Yeah, but he like defies the laws of physics and film, and is in and out of the frame and coming in from all directions, and walking around the frame of the film and everything. So it's like he exists outside of the movie almost.
I know Andy's got to like the Araquan.
Yeah, I was really confused.
So we then transition into Uruguay, where a young gauchito is going off on a hunt. And before we see the hunt, before he leaves for the hunt, we see some elements of his home. So, like where they make their bread, and they're just a peaceful, loving people. So I'm watching this and I'm there thinking, here's the propaganda elements right here.
Yeah.
These people are nice. They have homes. They are they go out and hunt. They're like us. They're not evil Nazis. So he puts on his gauchito outfit, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce those names, but he has his pants, and he has his scarf, and his hunting knife, and then he has the thing with the 3 balls that he can throw. So he's heading out to the mountains looking for condors, and instead he finds a flying donkey, and he quickly befriends the donkey and is able to ride him. So then he takes the donkey, which is called Burrito, to the day of Fiesta, where everyone is dancing and playing other games that your run-of-the-mill North American wouldn't know about. So again, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, more propaganda here. Where these people are just dancing, they're having a good time. They're not Nazis. They're not burning books. They're not rounding people up. These are great people down here. They're just having a good time like the rest of us.
They're just like you and me.
Yeah. So our young gaucho, and his flying donkey decide to enter a race. And when the race starts, of course, everyone's laughing because he's this little kid on a donkey, and all these horses go taking off down the race track. So after a slow start, he finally decides to let the donkey fly. So they go tearing down the track, and the track is not a typical race track. It's a straightaway, and then you go around a loop, and you come back down the same straightaway again. And he wins the race. But then everyone sees that this donkey is flying, and they say, well, you can't win the prize money. You have a flying donkey. And then it was kind of strange. I thought how it ended. He just flies away and is never heard from again.
This is the weirdest ending. It's always seemed so weird to me. He's like, and me and the donkey were never heard from again. Ha, ha, ha.
I didn't understand that.
What?
On this segment, the music, and I thought particularly when there was that scene where he has him on a string and the moonlight's going, was great. I mean, Paul J. Smith, he did like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and so much good stuff. Edward Plum did the orchestration. He did almost everything at that era. I just thought it was great music.
Yeah. And I should say about the music in this entire movie, they did a lot of scouting when they were in South America and in Mexico, and got a lot of local groups and a lot of songs that were popular at the time. And they had them rewritten with new lyrics for the film, but they were all either traditional songs or they were popular songs already in South America. And only the song that they sing later in the movie about Mexico, that's the only original song for the movie. The rest were like pre-existing music, if not the lyrics. The English lyrics were new, but the music was... Yeah, you're right. It's a great soundtrack.
So now we're back to Donald. He's back at his house wrapping up the film, and he decides to open up another present. And this time it's a pop-up book that reads Brazil. And
all right, hang on. At this point, I've got my notes. I'm at 22 minutes and 50 seconds in, and I still have absolutely no idea what's going on.
And you never will.
It says, what's up?
Little did you know what was coming.
I said, what's up with the penguin story and the flying donkey? And I said, but animation is well done.
I will say about the, this is just a totally random aside. At Disneyland Paris, they have this thing, this big like character fest every year or maybe multiple times a year. Because they have one of their big investors, I think like Saudi royalty or whatever, really loves characters. And so they invested an insane amount of money in like literally every character you could ever think of. And they have a meet and greet where you can greet Gachito and Burrito. Like people dressed up like Gachito and Burrito. And that is you can't get much deeper cut than that.
That's pretty, yeah.
So the question is that costume just like sitting in the closet and then they get it out once a year? Is that how it works?
It must be. Yeah, it must be, I guess.
Do they draw straws who gets to wear it? I mean,
who gets to be Burrito this year?
So it's a book now, and it says Brazil, and Bahia is the city that we're introduced to first from Brazil. And then we're introduced to a parrot named Jose. And the music of Bahia takes center stage at this point, and there's this whole law. I mean, it's not even. I guess there's no lyrics here. It's just, I mean, sort of flowing music, and we're introduced to scenes of Brazil. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like some of the rides at Epcot. I mean, it's just sort of just real scenic and flowing, and
definitely, and especially if you remember the old ride they had to the Magic Kingdom, If You Had Wings, where it was like traveling to sort of distant places. This had that vibe of just sort of scenic sunsets and things like that.
And I think there's some little Fantasia overlay too. There's some beautiful water on flowers and falling into a reflecting pool, all kinds of little special effects shots in this where the screen will kind of blur over and they'll dissolve into the next shot.
Yeah, I was thinking as we were watching this, like when we watched this when like we were kids, this was probably my least favorite part of the movie because it just kind of slows things down and it just kind of drags. It doesn't advance the story any, and it's just kind of this really low key thing in the middle. But now I really like it because it just is like a pure animation thing. Even though it is sort of a slow little interlude, it looks really, really good.
Yeah, I think it was my favorite part because of that same reason. It's like, it's not kind of manic and frantic. But it's really beautiful.
I have a note there that says, this is getting boring, -yawn.
So it was lost on Andy, but
I mean, I thought the like I said, the animation I thought was well done, but as far as the storytelling and all that kind of stuff, I'm just like, this isn't working for me. Again, I'm thinking this is a kids movie that for the whole family kind of a thing. So yeah, that's where I'm coming at.
Well, it is kind of like a low key thing to have. Like after you bring in Jose, who like people at the time, because Jose had been in Saludos Amigos, so like he and Donald and the audience would have known who he was. But you introduce him and he's kind of hyper, but then he goes into this really slow paced thing. So it's, it really is kind of like a slow thing to do right after you've introduced this character and you're like feeling like you're getting ready to go somewhere.
So they sing this whole song of about going to Bahia, and then they thumb through various scenes in the book while he's singing this song, and then all of a sudden they're in Bahia, and we see our first live action character.
But hold on.
You're missing a big one.
Yeah, there's a train that comes out of the book that takes them there.
That's right.
That train is just a really cool design and kind of day glow, paint
and more
color.
Mary Blair too.
Yeah, I mean it's just such a great design. And the other thing is, it was on DTV, wasn't it? On the DTV, that's what I always think of. That was on the Disney Channel. They had an MTV knockoff called DTV, and in their credit roll, they would play some of this.
Every time I see this, I think of DTV. And I wish I knew what Hall & Oates song they synced up to this. I can't remember. But
man, I'm just sitting here cringing thinking that there was something called DTV.
Oh man, you should get on YouTube because they're
you should.
I mean, it really is a Hall & Oates song with some old animation synced up.
So weird.
All right, so they hop a train, and this animated train, and then we're greeted again with the crazy bird. What was his name again?
The Araquan, yeah. He derails the train.
He derails the train, and it separates and goes flying off in all different directions. And then the locomotive jumps back in front as they all kind of come back together again, and then they pull into the station, and then they're in Bahia now.
That would make a great ride. That's the one thing that I always say should be a ride somewhere. I would ride the train to Bahia.
So now Carmen Miranda's sister appears, Aurora.
I mean, what can you say? Like you said, it was Carmen Miranda's sister, Aurora, who was a big star in Brazil herself. And the band that they actually have is Carmen's backing band, the Bando de Lua, apparently. One of whose members was the voice of Jose Carioca. This is the whole sequence is called Os Quindis de Ayá, and pardon my Portuguese, which doesn't exist. But yeah, so the idea is they're in town and she is selling cookies, and she's walking down the street selling cookies, and
she's selling cookies, all right.
Donald and Jose are thirsty birds for the cookie lady, and so they go chasing after the cookie lady. But there's a whole sequence of handsome guy shows up with guitar and starts singing, and so she's like, hey, and goes over for him, and then they're mad, and Donald tries to hit him on the head with a giant mallet, but it falls on Donald's head instead. And so she's constantly getting swayed between a couple of handsome dudes who are serenading her, and then Donald, who is trying to go in for a smooch. Eventually Donald gets a big smooch from Aurora, but not before there is also the guy who looms large in my childhood memory, the guy who does the thing with his teeth and a stick.
I was just going to say, I would always try to do that with a pencil.
I would too. I would always try to do that with a pencil. I don't know what he's doing or how it was done.
Or if it was real.
Or if it was real at all. Or if that's even a thing that people do.
Because I watched it. I rewound it and watched that part again, trying to figure that one out. And I think that was an effect. But that's just me.
I mean, I always wonder, is that a thing they really do in Brazil? I don't know. But I would always try to do it with a pencil too, because it's so, I don't know. It's so weird.
It is really weird.
That guy's got big teeth.
Yeah. And I thought the guitar guy was really funny.
Yeah. Well, they're all in their little like kind of sailor outfits. I mean, I don't know what the actual like outfit is called, but these
karaoke outfits,
yeah,
probably.
yeah, maybe like really tight striped shirts and everything, and they're all just kind of
pleated
strutting around.
Pants and,
yeah, it's good stuff.
There's a really incredible shot where they start circling around each other in some kind of rivalry. Let's fight about the cookie lady, and then they actually kind of morph into roosters, which is
I put that
really
down in my
cool.
notes here. That it was kind of an awkward moment. I thought it was kind of. I mean, it was the dance was. I'm assuming that was. I mean, that was the whole point of the dance was the mimic a cockfight, and then but of course the awkwardness of that being something that we don't do anymore. And
Right.
Yeah,
But yeah, that is the animation of that is real, like that shot, because it's shot in this like huge, like high contrast, like black on red background.
yes,
And then they morph them into like these roosters, and then morph them back into people, like live actor people.
It's just pretty incredible.
It's pretty good. But I love about it is they cut to like everybody watching, and they've got like their animated silhouettes kind of dancing on the wall. But then like Aurora is loving it. Like she thinks it's hilarious. Like these guys are like in a knife fight or whatever, and she's like, "Hey, I'm clapping."
Yeah, and like you said, their animated silhouettes, they have like their really square, stylized jaws, and
Yeah, it's really like, and you know what? The real thing this all reminds me of, especially when she goes outside after this fight, or she's just kind of done with it, and walks outside and like kind of waves her arms, and all the buildings come to life and start dancing, was very Who Framed Roger Rabbit to me.
yes,
yes. I definitely felt like that they drew something, because I was thinking the same thing, and as the town starts coming to life, like almost like Toontown.
Yeah, definitely Toontown vibe, strong Toontown vibe.
So I had an awkward moment there with Donald getting a little aggressive with Aurora, with his swooning. But
it sets up a major plot line for the rest of the movie.
there's a lot more of that to come. So
I was going to say that, like the reviews at the time this movie came out, like were either half of them were like, this is like incredible, because I mean, this was like tech that people hadn't seen before. Like people hadn't seen a movie that did this stuff before. They were like, oh, the wizardry of the technology is just incredible. It's unbelievable. And it's really weird, and you should check it out. And the others were like, this is unsavory, having cartoon birds lasciviously looking at real life women. This is unsavory. Like the New Yorker, I think, had one like article about this is Dr. Freud would not be pleased with this. Blah 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 blah. So like people at the time were like, the production office might not like this. This is not good.
So the segment wraps up here. The book closes, and Jose and Donald come squeezing out of the book in miniature form now. So then Jose uses, they call it, he said black magic. I thought, did he really say that?
Yeah.
So I had to rewind it, and then I heard it again, and I actually went and looked, and because I wanted to confirm. So what in the world?
That's all you have to do is use a little black magic.
Sure, yeah, why not? he does this whole sort of song and dance here, and then blows on his finger, and then he enlarges himself back into his normal size. So then he invites Donald to do the same thing. So Donald does his shtick, and he's trying to enlarge himself, and he blows on the wrong finger, and everything starts kind of going wonky, and he turns into all kinds of weird shapes, and it's really bizarre and kind of crazy. And I do have a note here, and for our historian, didn't they use that whole segment in a promo on the Disney Channel somewhere in the 80s where he was
yeah,
with a spotlight?
That always yes, you're totally right, because that always makes, like, all that stuff makes me think of Disney Channel. And I didn't know if it was like DTV, like Jeff was saying, but I think they totally used it in a promo, because
I remember
really
seeing it
familiar
all
to
the
me.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, and but they changed the coloring because in the movie it's kind of green tint to it, and I remember it, on the Disney Channel it was just normal coloring, so they kind of recolorized it a little bit to make it look normal.
I think you're right.
But yeah, I was hoping you would go, oh yeah, that's exactly it. That's the the promo. They aired that at 8:30 in the morning.
Before Mousercise and after
Before
Good Morning
Mousercise, that's right.
You and me,
I
kid.
think it was like one of those because it was like just a transition where like Donald would come out and introduce something, and he would come out and step into the spotlight, and then sort of do this thing, and then it would pan up and it would show what was next, But anyway.
They would always use like little clips. Like I remember them using. There's something he says before he, like at the very beginning of the movie when he's getting ready to watch the Penguin movie. And he's like sits down and he's like on with the show or something like that. I can't remember exactly what. And that's something that they used too. Like before like a movie started, they would do that. But I love the scene where like Donald's doing his like black magic, like and it's like him, and then he's like his like clothes fall off, and then he's like upside down and all this weird stuff. It's so weird. And then his thumb glows.
Right.
So Donald finally gets back to normal size, and Jose invites him to go open another gift. So this time, the final gift he opens is from Mexico, and we enter into Act 3 now.
Hold on.
So,
I have a note that says, these guys must be on some good drugs. I mean, the colors, like you were saying, though, it's just, they pop like crazy, but at the same time, none of this makes sense. And so we're 40 minutes in, and I still have no idea what's going on. I still don't understand anything. But then this next act we're getting ready to go into, finally I was like, okay, now stuff's starting to make sense a little bit.
Hurry, Donald, hurry!
Como é que vai chorar? O zóio de aiá. Como é? O zóio de aiá. Como é? O zóio de aiá. Como é que faz? Pena, o jeitão de aiá. Uma dor que eu não sei se é ou não amor. Só sei que aiá tem mais coisa que as outras aiá não tem.
Skinny aiá.
So, what I would describe it as sort of a graphical noise meter, where we like the music's playing and like Donald is like morphing according to like how loud the music is.
It's like he gets caught in the soundtrack, like the waveform of the soundtrack.
Exactly. So, and then at the climax, there's an explosion when a piñata forms on the screen through this sort of artistic interpretation of the music, and a gun-toting rooster emerges, firing off his 2 6-shooters in celebration. So, and then
that made sense to me. I could relate to that guy.
Like, finally.
It's like, okay, I know.
So
I know this
Panchito
guy.
is now introduced as the Mexican rooster, and they sing the song "The Three Caballeros," which is sort of the big showstopper. At least for me, I thought it was.
We're like 41 minutes in, and now we're finally referencing the title of this film.
Yeah, this sequence was mostly animated by Ward Kimball, who was a really super famous animator, and later in his older days, when he was a crotchety older guy, said that this was the only animation he was ever actually really proud of, because they let him go, like, because he was like a super crazy guy and really wild and out there, and they let him do kind of whatever he wanted to do. And so that's why it's so sort of manic and frantic when they sing this song.
I will say that I had a funny moment here, which I thought was good. Was this with Panchito hits the sustain at the very end of the song?
Oh, yeah.
And it holds
Yeah.
it for a longer period of time than is humanly possible. And then Donald
Yeah,
and Jose
yeah, yeah.
Are like jealous, and they try to stop him through various cartoon techniques, sawing the floor around him. Instead of him falling, the floor falls. They throw him into a casket, but.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all this. I mean, they do all these antics to try to stop him from singing.
I like they put the potted plants and water them, and it grows into like a hedge.
Yes.
And it burns up, right?
Yeah.
So at the very end, Panchito presents Donald with a piñata, and he explains what a piñata is. So this sort of this cultural moment now of what the history of the piñata is, and it's not just just something you pick up at the store and whack it open and not get toys. There's like this element of a Christmas to it, and they do this whole Christian transition about the children going door to door, holding candles, asking for shelter, just like Mary and Joseph did, which I thought was it was. I wouldn't say it was awkward, but it was, very touching. And then I started applying the propaganda part. Hey, they're Christians down there. These people are not Nazis again.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
I think the other thing is it's like the Bahia after you introduce Joe Carioca or Jose, and they kind of give it a little bit. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. They introduce Panchito, and then there's like a little breath where they go through and this cool, it's another Mary Blair. And this stuff really looks like that.
Yeah, it's just like straight up her paintings. Yeah, totally. And this is something like the Las Posada thing is something that they had seen firsthand, like when they were in Mexico doing research. And this was like the origin of like the Mexico segment of this movie was originally just going to be the Las Posada story. And everything else just kind of grew out of that. So this is really how they got started. One thing I want to note about Panchito, especially for Jeff, will appreciate. The voice of Panchito is an actor named Joaquin Garay, but his son, Joaquin Garay III, was the hobo pickpocket waif child from Herbie Goes Bananas.
Oh my.
So yeah,
we will see.
So
we'll
tuck that away for later use.
Yeah. So
You'll
you've already had the Who Took My Chicken guy and the waif child. Yeah. A lot to come. A lot to come on the podcast.
So that segment wraps up, and the children are invited. Finally, after going door to door, they're invited into a home, and then they have a piñata, and they break the piñata and celebrate the birth of Christ. So that's how they give gifts. So I thought that, again, that's kind of a touching, cultural reference there. So then they give Donald a piñata now. And in true Donald fashion, he struggles trying to get the piñata broken. So finally, after, I wouldn't say it was lengthy, but multiple attempts, he cracks the thing open. Gifts and candy and toys rain down, and one of which is a book about Mexico. So Panchito opens the book and talks about the history of Mexico, and more specifically about the legend of how Mexico City came about. And Michael, would you please explain?
Yes. Well, he gives a little talk about the flag, as you said, about the flag and how the god of the Aztecs had told them to find an eagle sitting on a rock, eating a snake. And when they found that, they should build their city. And so they found the eagle with the snake on the rock, but it was in the middle of a lake. So then they built a city over the lake, and that city became Mexico City. So we get these like kind of watercolor, it's called the folio sequence, where it's these, sort of watercolor scenes of Mexico City and the gardens there and everything. But it's like the characters are looking at them. They're like two-dimensional. It's like they're looking at a picture book of all this different stuff.
So Panchito then invites Donald and Jose to take a tour of Mexico on his magic serape, which is just a Mexican rug that you would see. And they fly around Mexico.
Carpet.
It's the fancy carpet.
And they fly around. I have a bit of trivia for you right here.
Okay.
There is a magic carpet in another Disney movie called Aladdin. You're welcome.
Well, we'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of that
Little
one.
known fact.
A little known fact that they stole that and used it again. And in this, what was it called again? What was the name of the movie?
I think it's pronounced Aladdin. Aladdin.
Aladdin.
Okay. No, it's Aladdin.
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 Aladdin, yeah.
That's it.
So they hop on the magic carpet now, and they fly around to a host of various live action scenes. And we're treated to some traditional Mexican folk dancing. We start here on Veracruz, where they're doing some dancing and on the Gulf Coast of Mexico.
And that, let me just say, that music is just some of my favorite music. I think it's called Jalisco music. Yeah. The Longo. That song is really good. And then before they get there, they hit their big Mexico Now That I've Found You number, which, who knew how big this used to factor into our childhoods, but I would always sing this song, which is kind of ridiculous.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, when I would think of Mexico, which wasn't that often, but I would think,
Mostly
Mexico, now that I found you.
So the Veracruz scene there, I got some notes here on this just from a filmatic standpoint, really jumped out at me because they're doing what was called a Dutch tilt or angle, which really is out of character for what they. I was like, why are they doing that? That doesn't make it. And it's where you tilt the camera at an angle and shoot, so the horizon line is not level now. And they did it 3 or 4 times, and I kept thinking, what? And I went and looked. I looked at the directors. I was like, is this a segment that was directed by somebody, different? And this guy just was one of those guys that liked that, because I guess typically you don't use it in a lighthearted, fun fashion.
Yeah.
It's more to show like drama or not kids dancing and folk music. So it just really, I put that, it's at the 55-16 mark is where they start doing the Dutch tilt shots. So again, I didn't.
And Alfred Hitchcock directed the Veracruz segment.
Right. That's what I was hoping for, something like that.
That's a good call on that, because that really is like a distinctive thing.
Yeah,
but it doesn't like fit in with the rest. But yeah, that's a really good point.
So Donald then asks if he can join in the dancing, and he does some American jazz swing moves, I thought, to the delight of the Mexican dancers.
One thing I read about, like, when they were making this was, like, because they were super culturally sensitive. Like, they wanted to be culturally sensitive and not, like, offend anybody. So they sort of as they did everything, they ran it by people to, like, make sure that, nothing was being made fun of or whatever. But they decided that, like, the perfect way to do it was to have Donald there for everything. And basically, he gets to act like an idiot. And then, like, everybody laughs at him. So it's like nobody's laughing at, like, the cultures or anything like that. It's just everybody laughing at, like, the clueless, like, American duck.
And then I put another note here, like, so Donald starts doing this dance, like, and they loop it. The animators loop it about 20 times. It's just over and over, and all the dancers are standing around Donald is laughing. And I'm going, okay, we've established it. Let's go. And they keep looping it. They keep looping it. So that's kind of what, I mean, that was a moment where I thought that they kind of phoned it in a little bit, when it was just kind of that whole segment. I mean, the dancing was good. The music was great, but the way they shot it, and then some of the, I thought they got a little lazy with the animation there too. Again, I was kind of wondering if maybe they were pressed for time, or they just was, they needed to do something.
That's a good question.
But
like, I know that, like, these segments were filmed later because, like, the way that they filmed, like, with Yaya earlier in Brazil, and the way that they filmed this later stuff, because it came later in the process after they had invented this optical printer, they did it differently. Because originally, like, a lot of the early Yaya stuff, she was in front. They did basically rear projection, like, process shot. And so they had to, like, in those scenes where she's interacting with Donald and Jose, she's standing like 10 feet in front of a screen, interacting, like, pantomiming to them, even though she's on a different plane. And they had to, like, stop down the camera way hard to get, everything in focus, and they had to have like a ton of light cast on it. So that's why they came up with these other ways of doing it. And so like in later shots, like in the Mexico stuff, you can tell that they really, really leaned hard, because Walt was kind of obsessed with the like having cartoon characters interact with real people, since it was a new thing. Like he was like super into it. So they like looked for more and more and more ways to like have people interact with the cartoons. So I think that's probably responsible for like a lot of what you're talking about, of like them showing it kind of over and over again, because they were like, oh, get a load of this or whatever.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I always thought that the Yaya segment looked a little like hazy compared to the other stuff. And the other stuff looks incredible considering the technology involved. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know about the actual animation or looping, but...
no, you're right, though. That's why
the
Yaya
shots
stuff.
of, the process stuff, it looks so crisp and as good as any stuff in, like, Mary Poppins or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Granted, it's kind of the opposite.
And they actually went back and reshot a lot of the Yaya stuff later once they developed this, so that the characters could come out and interact and, like, dance in front of the people, like, after they figured out how to do that. So they went back and redid some of it, but not all.
And it's this point where we get, so buckle up, guys. We're going to the big push to the end. And if you, Andy, if you thought it was weird now, what were your thoughts next? So
I wrote in my notes that it all truly goes wrong in Acapulco.
So just as Jeff points out, they leave Veracruz and they fly to Acapulco, which is the French Riviera of the Mexican coastline.
Lilongo, vamos al templo, para que nos bendizca el Padre. No tenemos que casar, aunque no quiera tu madre. A Lilongo, Lilongo, Lilongo. La 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 la.
So they arrive and they say, Donald, why don't you take a look at what we may call hot stuff? So Donald looks through the glass.
What do you mean?
Elaborate.
And sees all these beautiful women on the beach. So then they proceed to dive bomb the girls on the beach with their carpet.
Hold on. My note there was, Donald just got horny. Watch out.
I wrote, dive bombing your magic carpet and shooting people isn't a way to pick them up, to my knowledge.
Yeah,
So,
they're like
and
strafing them.
And I put that in my notes. Yeah, I was like I said, what were they thinking during the war? Because this was produced during the war, that they were dive bombing girls on a beach in Mexico and strafing them. So then they land, and Donald exits the carpet and proceeds to play a rousing game of blind man's bluff with the girls. And he's blindfolded. They're chasing him around.
He's cheating though.
It's just he keeps peeking. So, but I did point out here, this was really interesting though, I thought, because you see, this is the first time, and it's got to be the first time in film history that we see like inanimate objects interacting with animation. So he jumps into a pool of water, we see the water splash.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And then he's in a beach blanket, and they're flinging him up in the air, and we actually see him landing in the actual beach blanket. And then when they fling him, he flies out of the beach blanket, and the beach blanket is interacting with an animated character. So I thought that was pretty cool and neat that they're able to do that.
Yeah, I still am not sure how they did that with the blanket. Like if they just
I couldn't figure it out either. I was trying to
animated.
figure it out. I watched it several times
Yeah.
trying to figure it out how they did it.
Like I thought maybe they just had somebody jumping that animated over it, but like the match of the animation and like his like divot in the blanket or whatever you call it is like, it's perfect. It looks like real.
Only thing I could think of was they had a ball, like maybe not necessarily like a bowling ball that heavy, but just something maybe 5 pounds, and sort of in the shape of.
That's what I
maybe
thought,
just
yeah.
of like Donald's torso, and then they were throwing that up in the air and then animating over it. So that's the only thing I could think of they were doing.
Really good.
thought it
Like
was pretty
he
cool.
comes like
Yeah.
shooting up out of the sand, and they have like a blast of sand, and like you said with the water. One thing I will point out about this, which I didn't know until I was like probably out in California at the studio, they shot these beach scenes that are supposed to be Acapulco. All the ones with Donald and the girls were actually shot at the Disney lot in the parking lot in Burbank. They filled up the entire parking lot with sand, and like when you see the mountains in the background, those are like the mountains of Burbank.
I was wondering that. Yeah, I was going to ask about that because I saw the wall.
Yeah,
And
there's that wall.
And the way
there.
the camera's angled, the way the camera was angled, I thought, is that the back of the sound stage that they're on? I thought that's really, really bad.
Yeah.
And then the next, so I was writing that down, and then the next shot comes up, and you see it's actual wall, like a real wall, and they're actually outside. You see the mountains in the background, and I thought, I bet they're on a parking lot somewhere.
Yeah,
So I was
yeah, that's totally like Burbank studio parking lot filled with sand. So that makes it even more funny that they had all those women out there just like running around in the parking lot.
Where was Annette Funicello? That seems like that would be sort of like her thing, to be in a scene like that, because she did all those beach movies.
If only it would have come,
Yeah, a few decade, a decade or two too soon.
So they leave Acapulco now, and they go to the nightlife of Mexico, but we're only treated to do it through a picture, and it just sort of like animated flashing lights over Mexico City, and then it sort of morphs, and then Dora Lutz appears in head form and sings "You Belong to My Heart."
Yeah, I was gonna say we leave from here and go into the ether of wherever we are going.
Donald's
Donald's id.
passion. Yeah, exactly.
So Andy, at this point, with the head, with Dora's head here, what were you thinking now?
I don't know. I'm still confused on so many other things. I mean, the Three Caballeros, first of all, they just like shut up the place and they pulled out like a Tommy gun. And then we're like singing, actually my very next note after that is like, am I tripping? Because it did not make, I just could not understand what was happening. I was like, this does not make any sense to me. I mean, now that I know this is propaganda, where's the propaganda with the women and all that stuff? What's that? Where does that fall?
Well, that's what I wrote. I don't understand how this is supposed to help Latin and U.S. relations.
Yeah.
The Nazis don't have anything like this.
That's true. They did not. Do the Nazis think you're pretty?
Yeah.
Like we think you're pretty? But yeah, it is funny how you point out how with like them coming in with like the Tommy gun is like there'll be like 5 seconds of her singing to Donald this beautiful song, and then like Jose and Panchito will show up and like shoot up the place and like screaming,
Or be sped up.
Yeah, like really sped up. Like a lot of this was like something you'd see in the 70s with like especially the scenes of their heads on dancing legs, like real like live action women's legs. Like that's something from like you can't do that on television or something. I don't know. It's really strange.
Yeah. Some fun, kid?
Who was the? I'm trying to. Wasn't it the Herbie Hancock? Didn't he do like a music video with the legs? Maybe he drew an inspiration from that. So
Yeah, maybe.
anyway, just throw a little Herbie Hancock reference in there. I mean, this whole sequence, I took it as a sort of that Donald kind of went to sleep. It was in sort of a dream state.
Yeah,
that's the only thing. That's how I could make sense of any of this. So, like we said, Dora's head turns into a flower. She keeps singing, and then like as she would like bloom, and then Jose and Panchito would jump out and start shooting. It just was really weird. And then like this whole dance number takes place with cacti, and
Now hold on. Before that, there's the little blue flower lady dance, which is like the moment of Zen. The little, I don't know what it is. It's like
it's almost like the music is almost reminds me of like Dr. Zhivago.
Well, I was
going to
say it's very Eastern European. It sounds like balalaika music.
Yeah.
And that dance is hilarious. Just very meditative. And then it goes into the cactus scene, which is...
So that's with Carmen
Molina.
Morlina.
Mm-hmm.
Carmen Molina.
That's like something
Carmen
from a
Molina
Christopher Guest movie or something.
I was kind of, I was entertained by that whole sequence, the cactus stuff. I thought that was kind of
like, I love her.
And,
it always reminds me of Three Amigos a little because of her outfit. She's got a kind of on this like uniform, like this, like she's got a riding crop and her like she's kind of cute and in this like uniform with like these big boots, and she comes out and does this crazy dance with the cacti.
But I pointed out the lighting I thought was really impressive, how they were shooting this and the lighting effects they were using. And I think the lighting director, I need to go look and see who did that, but I thought they hit it out of the park there.
Yeah, totally.
Just because there was like, I'm not sure if they were like turning lights on and off, or if they actually had the lights like set up to where as she stepped forward, she would step into a different light and it would illuminate her. But she's doing all these kind of weird, going through these weird lighting effects. My guess is they were just turning them on and off. But either way, it was kind of cool. And it took a lot of work to set all that up.
Yeah.
So I was from a technical standpoint, I really enjoyed watching that sequence.
Well, and even more impressive considering this was the most like live action film they'd ever done on their sound stages for any of the movies, because they hadn't really done. They had shot like the composer sequences for Fantasia and some stuff for like Victory Through Our Power, but nothing like this. So it makes it even more impressive that it looks so good.
Well, and I was going to say that it did remind me of the lighting in Fantasia, which is, those live action sequences have a lot of cool lighting stuff on it.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So the big finish here, Michael, take us away. What happens here?
Oh man, I don't even know. Well, there's so much. I love the scene where like Donald's flying around like a hummingbird, but it's all like done in neon, like really weird neon. That's in there somewhere. And you've got the cutting back and forth to these different musical numbers. And so then it all comes out to, everybody's falling out of the piñata and Donald's inside a bull because a bull had this bull costume had fallen out of the piñata, and so Donald's in it going at the other guys, and it's like a bull on wheels with like dynamite hanging off of it.
Naturally,
which I guess is a thing. Yeah, and so like they light the dynamite as he's going around, and so they're it just kind of winds up to this big explosion. And then we see in the sky in the different colors fireworks for the different countries, Finn and Fim and the end. And that's it. Ends with a bang.
Got to wrap this thing up. I was like looking at when the cactus scene was going on and everything was going so haywire. And I just looked up. I was like, how much time is left? Because I don't remember anything else after this. And it's like, oh, this is it. This
like
is
literally a minute.
It's like 1 minute. And they're going to finish the movie. It feels nowhere near done.
Yeah, there's no like goodbye. There's no like, so that's that. It's just blow up Donald and then salute the fireworks, the end.
Yeah, my thought at that moment was, what did I just watch? I said, 1 minute it's like an educational film, and then they're singing and dancing, followed by Donald chasing skirts, and then a bird opens fires with his pistols. Then eventually Donald turns into a bull, ending with a red, white, and blue explosion. I was like, it said the end, question mark.
Sounds like Disney entertainment to me.
Yeah, it's family entertainment.
Take that, Nazis.
Yeah.
What do you got now?
And Hitler do this?
Yeah, what do you got now, Hitler? I really wanted to be I wonder what the writing room was like when they were trying to figure out how to wrap this thing up, because it was like it's the hodgepodge. And let's just transition into our final thoughts in the movie. So it's just sort of a hodgepodge of various elements, and then they kind of put it all together like we talked about at the beginning. But yeah, how they came to the conclusion of that movie was just, so let's just have a Donald. We need to have a big fanfare, a bit of fireworks. Let's put Donald in a bull costume and light him on fire.
Yeah. And he's like kind of demonic because he's like kind of snorting and kind of manic and going after the other guys.
So overall impressions here. We'll start with Jeff.
Well, it's always fun to go back to. It's like I said, I was struck with how much of this stuff goes way back to watching these segments on the Disney Channel, I guess.
Yeah.
Just and I've watched it through the years, but just remembering how much of it goes that far back. I think there's a lot of richness here. I mean, obviously, it's very bizarre and oddly packaged together, but I think again, I love all kinds of like Latin American music, so I'm kind of a sucker for the music, and all the art design I think is incredible. And the writing is bizarre, and the the way the Randy Birds, I will never understand why.
So my impression, if I go back to my childhood, I hated it as a kid because I remember seeing it, and then like they'd have like the segments, they'd play the short segments as standalones, and I'd be like, oh god, not the birds again. I remember thinking I'd either change the channel or fast forward the VHS tape that we had it on, and to go to something else. So I never liked it as a kid. I remember I liked Pablo, and I watched that a lot, that segment a lot. But I will say that I had it for my kids to watch, and I walked into the den one day, and it was on, and it was sort of a double take moment because it was the Aurora Miranda sequence, and I sort of walked by. I was like, oh, what are you guys watching? And they're like, we don't know. They were confused too. So, I think they really enjoyed the flying donkey sequence, and then and Pablo, and then then it morphs into the live action stuff, and it kind of, I believe they didn't make it past into the Mexico segment. I think they turned it off after. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Should come with a PG rating.
So, but I think after the third time, I texted Michael and Jeff last night, and I was doing notes again. I was like, it grew on me. I mean, the music really and the design. I think from an adult standpoint, watching it, I'm impressed with what they were doing and the technologies they were implementing here, and the way that they're interacting with the animation, even how like they animated the shadows and of the live action people. The dance, and then, you'd see them step in and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that I thought was really cool. Again, when they did the Dutch tilt stuff, I was like, what in the world? But, I mean, it's funny, and if you keep it in context, and it's propaganda, and then it makes a lot more sense, and it makes it more enjoyable, at least from a historical standpoint for me. So I liked it for that. But we'll go ahead and toss to Andy now.
Go to Michael.
All right, so I think we kind of know what Michael's impression is, but we'll go ahead and let Michael speak for himself here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I really like this movie because it's so weird, and because it's not like something you're going to sit down and watch like Little Mermaid or Tangled or something where there's a story and like a conventional sort of thing, but especially as I've gotten older and just like enjoying animation that's just kind of like pure animation that doesn't need to actually make sense, just that looks really cool. I really enjoy some of the stuff, like I said, like the Bahia thing that I wasn't really into as a kid. I like more just because it looks really nice. But like as a kid, I think it was just that I don't know. When you're a kid, everything's kind of confusing and weird. So it was weird, but not like I was like, all right, well, I guess this is what people in Brazil do. They take sticks and like play them on their teeth. I guess that's a thing. When you're a kid, you just got to roll with it. But there were things that I liked in the slower parts that I didn't like. I always liked the Caballeros, and I liked any of the stuff with them. I always thought that was cool. But now I like even the slower parts more, just because they do stuff in animation. Like I mentioned the part where Donald's flying around and it's neon, and the part where he's the soundtrack and stuff like that. They just don't cut wild with stuff like that anymore. Well, I mean, they don't do hand-drawn at all anymore, but they don't like really go really experimental crazy anymore. And I just kind of like that they were allowed to do that. So I just like in general like the vibe. Like Jeff said, the South American vibe is really cool. The 1930s / early 40s kind of vibe is neat because I kind of like that era. So it just kind of has a vibe that I like, even though, it's episodic and weird and, doesn't really have an ending. But I think it's a lot of fun and it looks fantastic.
All right. Without further ado,
Big Andy.
the big finish.
Oh, well.
Lay it on us, Andy.
Well, I want to talk to the listener right now. Just come in a little bit closer here, listener. You're a smart person. I'm a smart person. These other guys, they're not so smart. Let's be real about this thing. This has to be the worst thing I've seen yet since being on this podcast. This is...
You watched Gus.
Give me Gus any day of the week over this. It's okay, listener. If you feel the same way, it's all right. It took me... I'm so glad it was only an hour and 9 minutes, because if it had been an hour and 10 minutes, I may have gone crazy at that point. But going back to now knowing what I know, that it was propaganda and all that kind of stuff, it makes so much more sense. But I came into this thing.
That's what I was going to ask. Was like, did it change after you've heard us talk about it? Has your
I think
changed,
rewatching it now with this new context would make it so much more. I don't know, probably and more enjoyable. But coming in cold on this thing, it's pretty rough. So I mean, it's. I don't know. Maybe I'm not.
We were wringing our hands because we were really looking forward to it, because I knew that you would have no context. I thought this is going to be really.
So maybe if I watched it again after seeing this, my feelings would change. But I'm going to rate everything based off.
Feel free to cue it right back up.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Let's watch it right now.
Let's do it right now.
Well, yeah, like when you come into it, like, well, you've got Snow White and Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast, and with going in without any context, it's bound to be just totally baffling.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Absolutely.
I can't remember when I must have been a teen when my dad mentioned that it was propaganda, and I went, oh, like a light went off. Like he said, you know why they did that? And I was like, why? And he said, because they were, trying to convince everybody that South America is our friend, and they were wanting, us not to want to go to war with them. And I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense now. I got it.
Well, and even
more, there's so much more I didn't even know when Michael was talking earlier.
Yeah. Well, even in the era, I think there was like a big fascination with like Cuba, and back when Cuba was relations were way different, and South America, there was like this sort of romantic kind of pop cultural thing anyway that they were kind of playing into, because I mean, like Carmen Miranda was already a thing, and a lot of like the big dance orchestras were from down there, and so it was already kind of a thing anyway. But then the propaganda on top of that made it even a bigger deal. And like a lot of, we talked about the music, a lot of these songs, believe it or not, became like huge hits. Like You Belong to My Heart was covered by a ton of famous people. And even the Three Caballeros, Bing Crosby covered, and was a big hit for him. So like most of these songs actually became really, really popular songs for a while.
I forgot that Bing Crosby covered Three Caballeros.
Yeah. It was a different age.
Yes,
a different time.
I would say so.
You should play us out to that, Jeff.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe I will. Okay, well, it's time to rate this thing with our patented revolving rating system. Robert, what's our scale tonight?
There's really only one scale to use for this movie, and that is pretty girls. So how many pretty girls are we talking about here?
Yes.
Pretty girls are like
On
that
a
have been
scale of
shot.
1 to 4 pretty girls.
Pretty girls.
So let's begin with the plot and writing. I mean, we'll begin with Michael.
Well,
It's kind of hard to.
That's a good question because there's. I mean,
We all can see there's no real plot here. It's more.
right? It's a conceit, or I mean, basically the plot of the entire movie was made up later than the actual parts of the movie itself. So I'm going to go and give it, on overall plot, probably a 2, just because there's not.
Yeah, I'm going to say 1 for the same reason.
I'm gonna go with 1 because it's like you said. The plot is more the propaganda part, is what the plot. For me, that's what I saw. And but if you don't know that, then there's no plot at all. So, but
Yeah, exactly. So do I have to give it a 1?
I think it's
Can I give it a 0?
But Donald's getting presents.
so there is still a plot there.
It's his birthday.
Half a star? Half a pretty girl?
Okay, well, so we give. Okay, we got one. We got a half a pretty girl. All right, casting. We will start with Jeff.
It's kind of hard, with plot and writing and casting. I just feel like they play such. I think the real star is the animation and the kind of art direction. So it was fine. I don't know whether to rate that a 2 or 1. Maybe I'll say.
Yeah, I think when you look at the talent, from a talent standpoint, because you have Aurora Miranda. Her dance numbers, and everything, and then Carmen's dance numbers at the end. So there's talent there, and I think they're conveying it.
I'm gonna go with 2 then.
All right, Andy.
I don't know. 1.
1. Okay. Michael.
I am going to go. Yeah, this is like Jeff said. This is a hard one because it's like the real stars are the artists and everything. If you wanted to say the casting of the artists, it would be a 4. I'm going to give it a 3 because everybody did what they were supposed to do and did it well. So,
I'm gonna give it a 2. So
I got to balance out Andy somehow.
okay, so the first 3 are tough because it's acting. So, voice acting. How do you guys want to rate that? It's kind of hard.
I'm just gonna stay with 2, just the same as casting. I just don't feel like it affects the movie as much.
Right. I'm gonna agree, Michael. So I got a 2. Jeff's got a 2.
I'll go with a 3 again.
3. All right. And Andy.
Because I had to turn on subtitles, 1.
Man, Clarence Ducky Nash is rolling over in his grave.
I know, really.
Or maybe he's rolling over with glee. Maybe it's like
Yeah, Donald never does well in heavy dialogue scenarios.
Another hard.
I do
2
feel
coming in
like
for acting.
this is deep Donald, but the guy who does it now is so much more unintelligible than
I really
Clarence
can't
Nash was.
it was funny. Andy was talking about how he had trouble understanding it, and I thought when I was watching it, wow, it's so much easier to understand than he is today. I totally agree with that.
I felt like maybe the opposite because I've been watching a lot of. Not in recent years, but 3 or 4 years ago, I was watching a lot of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and I was watching a lot of Donald Duck there with my kids, and I never had that. I don't remember struggling with his dialogue on Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
I really have a trouble. Well, I haven't watched that show, but I have a trouble with modern.
You should check it out, Michael.
Donald.
It's
Well,
pretty
you know,
good.
I'll get around to it.
I know somebody who could show you the
Mortimer
ropes.
Mouse makes an appearance in it, which is a nice throwback.
Nice.
But,
That's a good deep cut too. Yeah.
all right. Anyway, so back on track here. I think we're going to get much higher scores here for our next part. So production value.
Yeah, I will say 4 on this.
As will I.
I'll give it a 3. Actually, I take that
gonna
back.
go
I'm
with
gonna
a 3.
go 4. I thought I really did enjoy the
wow.
animation. I thought that was really well done and that kind of stuff. So
Okay, I was going to go 3, and I think I'm going to stay 3 because I think the first segments didn't blow me away. The first act didn't blow me away. I mean, I think production value really my eyes started kind of getting wide during the second and third act.
Yeah.
But I
agree
mean,
with that.
I think the first act was just kind of. I mean, it wasn't bad. There wasn't anything there that I was going ugh. But I mean, it was just your traditional cartoon story that they were telling, which is I think why going back to why my kids liked it. So I'm gonna go with a 3. So. And last but not least, the entertainment value. We'll start with Andy on this.
0.
Not
Andy was
allowed.
not entertained in
0
the
is not
slightest.
allowed.
All right. Whatever the lowest score I can give it. Because I was
Well, you gave it a 0.5 earlier.
all right,
I think we could,
half a pretty girl again.
if you want to go,
Because I was not entertained at all. I was confused and disturbed.
Oh man, that's so bad.
all right. So Jeff, we'll go to you next.
I would say 3. I think there's just a lot of interesting stuff to chew on, and I think the objectionable or just weirdness is a plus for my entertainment value. You know, I like laughing at the spectacle of it. I agree with you that the first act kind of is a little slow. It feels like just like animated shorts, which there's stuff there too, but after that I enjoy most of it. I mean, Acapulco is really kind of hard to watch until they start doing all those cool live action tricks.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a 4. I mean, I can see giving it a 3 because I agree that the opening, like I like both of those shorts, especially the penguin one. I like a lot. I really wish that those had just been released as shorts, and then the rest of the movie had been just the antics of Donald and Jose and Panchito, like doing an adventure, you know.
Right.
So the first part of the movie is definitely, I think, the weakest part. So, you know, on a decimal level, I'd probably get it lower than a 4, but rounding up, I'll give it a 4.
All right, I'm gonna give it a 2.5.
Oh man, we're really getting into the decimals
Well, I was
tonight.
thinking 3.75, but I'll just stay to 4.
Man.
So so that comes in at 2.5 total, and that gives us a grand total at 2.275,
Pretty girls.
which comes in just underneath Absent-Minded Professor overall. Still beats out Boatniks and Gus.
Couldn't agree more.
No way.
Yeah.
So,
Man, let me tell you, I watched. I've been home. We're home for the holidays as we record this, and I watched Gus with my parents the other night. And let me tell you, that is some hard watching. That is some rough going.
Yeah, what did they say about it?
They were amazed, because they didn't. I don't think that either of them had ever seen it, and they were like, "Wow, that was a dumb movie. What were they thinking?" But they were impressed with. I don't know.
Ralph's.
Yeah. At least I tracked down online where the Rouse was. Anyway, we won't get into that. But yeah, Gus, pretty bad.
Larry
Caballero
Zonka's
is
hair.
better than Gus. Larry, yeah.
all right, so the last episode we did our live action reboot or a reboot. I'm thinking this needs to be our live action reboot, and I named a director. So the guy with the hot hand right now over at Disney is Jon Favreau, and he has done a lot of live action reboots. So he's directing this thing.
Well, that's perfect.
How in the world do you do a live action
Well,
reboot with?
I thought Pedro Pascal would be a great Joe Carioca. So that'd be perfect.
There you go. There you go.
I don't know.
Yes.
Like Donald always remind me of like Stifler from American Pie, especially for this movie. And so I
am
can see
appalled. I am appalled.
Sean William
man.
Scott, just chasing.
Podcast over. We have crossed the
Oh
line.
man, it's terrible.
We have crossed the line.
Oh, so
I don't even know what to say.
but Donald's still got. So you want Stifler to voice Donald, or you want him to
No,
like,
I mean he
replace
embodies
Donald in the-
Donald. I mean he's selfish. He's a hornball. I mean it seems perfect to me.
okay, all right.
And where is the guy who plays Poe Dameron in Star Wars now? Where is he from? I can't think of his name because I'm
Oscar Isaac? Is that-
Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
He's sort of
Yeah.
yeah. But I was thinking, Yaya, the cookie lady, could be Shakira.
Shakira, okay. Well, or is Jennifer Lopez going to be in this anywhere?
Oh, she could be the cactus lady.
Oh my.
How about Ricky Martin? Is he going to play Jose?
No. He could do Panchito. Pedro Pascal's Jose.
Okay.
Pedro Pascal says that.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. So yeah, Ricky Martin.
Is Ricky Martin still around?
He hadn't.
It's time for his live action reboot.
He lingers still.
Yes. They could get him cheap, I would assume.
Yeah.
And the pretty girls as themselves.
Yes.
Yes. So, we'll do a transition here. This is a special episode because we're not saying goodbye, but one of our society members, we did this for a specific reason. We picked this movie for a specific reason.
To torture
One of our society
Andy.
members,
Yeah.
to torture Andy. But one of our society members is actually going to be spending some time in Brazil starting this winter. So we kind of wanted to be this. This is going to be his big send-off episode. And he's not going away, folks. We're still going to be creating content. But he will be creating it from his location in Brazil. So, Jeff, we wish you luck in Brazil.
Thank you.
Have
I'll
you
be-
ever been to
travels.
Bahia?
Well, and I'm sad that I'm not going to Bahia that I know, but I hope I will. I'll be in Rio de Janeiro.
I, for one, I'm glad you're not going to Bahia because if you go to Bahia, you never come back.
Well,
That's
I
what the
know,
movie
yeah.
said.
I was thinking
So
about that as
I-
I was watching this. I was like, that's kind of ominous.
If I see
now.
an Araquan with a train, though, I'm not going to pass up the opportunity to get on that train. Yeah, I'm very excited. Maybe this is indoctrinated. Maybe this is my days have been numbered because I watched Three Caballeros so much on Disney Channel as a kid that I was destined to go to Brazil someday.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that like Jose Carioca, Andy obviously needs to take a trip to Brazil because Jose Carioca is a big character there. Like he has remained in the culture. He is he's had a comic strip and like a ton of comic books and stuff, and has remained like a big mascot in the culture there. And I should get in a plug. Sorry, I want to get in a plug for those of you with Disney Plus. There's a short series of cartoons. It's 13 episodes of The Legend of Three Caballeros, which came out last year. So check that out.
And if you're
interested.
curious, as Michael and I watched the first episode, it is pretty weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's almost as weird as
So they're sticking to the formula, then, is what you're saying?
Yeah, there's Araquan Bird and lots of weirdness. So
there's
yeah.
a lot of weirdness. But yeah, definitely.
All right,
worth
Andy,
checking
get on it, buddy.
Yeah,
Let's know what you
13
think.
eps,
Well,
man.
I mean,
yeah.
Andy's going to rewatch the first one with his context now. So
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
So that about wraps it up for the Three Caballeros for us. We sadly bid adieu to the Mexican
It was
sunset.
very interesting.
Yes.
I got to
Very.
tell you, yeah, because there's a lot of contrasting opinions here,
Right.
and it did not disappoint at all. That's exactly what I was hoping for out of this. So I really enjoyed it. I thank you guys for joining me and talking about it.
And it was really neat to do an animated movie. We will be going back to live action next month with our episode 3 this season. We are going to do the first version of Freaky Friday. So make sure you watch it. It's on Disney Plus, as are, I think, most of the movies we're going to do are going to be on Disney Plus. So if you haven't, who all's seen this movie?
I haven't in a long, long time.
I haven't either.
It's been a while for me. I really liked it growing up, though. It was on heavy rotation in my home growing up. So I'm looking forward to revisiting it. I probably hadn't seen it in 20 years, I bet.
I'm going to be skeptical thinking that it's going to be like propaganda again. So
So the big question, so Andy, you have not seen the Jodie Foster Freaky Friday.
I have not seen
correct?
that one or the Lindsay Lohan one.
Okay, well, I don't think anyone saw the Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, excuse me. I did. Yeah.
It's actually good. It is good.
It's really
I would
good.
say.
Okay, okay. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Oh, we might find out about it someday.
Yeah.
It's definitely a pod worthy. Great. Well, so everybody check out Freaky Friday. We'll be back with bells on. Please be sure to follow us on Twitter. What's that Twitter handle?
It is at Medfield Film.
At Medfield Film. We'll have updates.
And follow us on Instagram now as well.
Oh,
for
yeah.
kicking that off.
Instagram. Yes, of course.
With the same handle. Our same user.
Same
Or
handle.
whatever you call it.
Okay.
Gamer tag.
What kind
Check
of
us out on Xbox Live.
What are we going to
We'll
put
play
on
Fortnite.
Instagram? Pictures of what? Like me looking bored?
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know quite what's...
Andy's current mood. It's
Yeah.
Your like blood pressure readout.
There you go.
So yeah, from all of us to all of you, we will see you next time. Thanks for listening.
All right, good night, everybody.
Proud are we of mighty Redfield, alma mater dear. All your sons and daughters hail to thee, Redfield College of Technology. And while we hold your banner high, rock, rock, we shout your praises to the sky, rock, rock. For proud are we of mighty Redfield, loyally we cheer. Redfield, Redfield, rah, 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 our alma mater dear.
Araquan.